They say the third time's the charm, and with Control, Finnish developer Remedy have struck gold in the graphics department. Remedy has been a console-focused developer in the past. 2010's Alan Wake redefined graphics expectations for the Xbox 360 with its spectacular volumetric lighting system. This lent the whole Twin Peaks-esque affair that extra touch of authenticity. In 2015, Remedy pushed things even further out with Quantum Break. With this game, Remedy introduced its Northlight engine and a stunning dynamic global illumination system, offering best-in-class lighting. The game came only months after the whole Resolution Gate scandal about Xbox One's inferior hardware specs cooled down. It was something of a relief for Xbox and PC gamers to have a title that could go toe-to-toe with the likes of Uncharted 4 in the graphics department. Quantum Break didn't fare that well in sales, though. This must have stung a little bit, especially considering all that money that must have been lavished on the game's extensive FMV sequences. But now, 4 years later, Remedy's returned with another title built on Northlight, Control. Control pushes graphical boundaries, just like Remedy's earlier titles. But this time, it's all about creating a spectacular PC gaming experience. NVIDIA RTX has been out for nearly a year now, and apart from Metro Exodus and Battlefield 5, there haven't been too many real ray tracing experiences. There's been no real reason to buy into RTX's key selling point. But Control was built by Remedy in close partnership with NVIDIA, and the result is a game that's the literal poster boy for that old adage, PC gaming always looks better. PC games at high-end settings do indeed look better than console releases, but these days it's almost always been a subtle refinement. A resolution boost here, slightly higher polygon counts there. The introduction of RTX ray tracing radically alters the PC version of Control for the better. This is a game with a literal night and day difference between the PC and console versions, and much of that is down to ray tracing. But just what makes Control tick? Well, let's find out. PC versus PS4 Pro versus Xbox One X performance. Before we proceed ahead, a note. On the console front, we analyzed the game's performance by taking some sample scenes from the game and running it through TR-Drop, an open source software. Note that this tool gives us a mere demonstration of the game's performance, because an exact one-to-one representation of performance can only be provided by the developers themselves, since they have access to a vast array of tools and profilers. Both the mid-cycle refresh consoles hand in a surprisingly refined presentation in Control. The trade-offs versus the high-end PC experience are glaring, especially with the lack of ray tracing. But as a console title in its own right, the experience is great. On Xbox One X, we're likely seeing a native 4K presentation that maintains a 30 FPS locked performance. The PS4 Pro version of the game had a noticeably softer presentation, likely running around 1440p. Once again, just like the Xbox One X version, there were no performance drops. On the PC front, the game includes the likes of far object detail, texture resolution, texture filtering, shadow resolution, shadow filtering, volumetric lighting, SSAO, global reflections, MSAA, film grain, and several options for ray tracing. We tested the game on a PC that includes a GTX 1080 Ti, 16GB of GDDR4 memory, and a Ryzen 1700 CPU. Overall performance was minimum 60 FPS in DX11 mode with everything maxed out. However, in DX12 mode, we faced severe performance issues. At this point, DX11 was the only way we could play the game in a stable manner. So let's talk about the visual differences between the console versions and PC. Of course, there's no ray tracing, but apart from this, visual changes relative to the PC version are fairly subtle. LODs are a bit more aggressive, so there's more pop-in, and SSRs are a bit less accurate, as is volumetric lighting. Overall though, it's a fairly close match for PC version's high preset, with a 30 FPS cap in place, of course.
Reach the hotline.
The hotline. Dead man? Okay. Okay.
There you are. You are here about the job. Janitor's assistant. You need to go to the interview. Go that way to the elevator.
Thanks. Elevator that way. Got it.
Very good. I'm Ahti, the janitor, by the way.
Jesse Faden. I'm just visiting.
I should have lied.
Oh shit! You're the new director. Hold on. We're coming out.
Director Faden. Call me Jesse.
There's a hole hidden behind that poster that leads to the real world. We all feel safe in that room. But sometimes something crawls out from behind the poster. And the ones that see it happen freak out and try to forget what they saw.
Engine summary. As we mentioned earlier, Control is built on the Northlight engine. This is a proprietary engine Remedy debuted with Quantum Break. However, Alan Wake were based on in-house tech. In that light, Northlight, as introduced in Quantum Break, can be seen as the logical next step after Alan Wake, to make use of 8th gen hardware advances. Many of Northlight's key features can be tracked back to these earlier games. Remedy was among the earliest developers to incorporate ragdoll physics. When they incorporated Havoc, physics interactions have played a prominent role in Remedy's later titles as well. Quantum Break in particular made great use of environmental microdestruction. Wood chipped away and pieces of paper and other debris flew during combat. In Control, we see even more of this. Previous Remedy games made use of the tried and tested Havoc middleware for ragdoll physics. With Control though, Remedy's opted to use a different physics middleware. They've been tight-lipped about exactly what it is that they're using. And considering the NVIDIA-centric nature of the title, it's practically RTX's first major showcase barring Exodus, we'd have assumed it was PhysX. But apparently that's not the case either. Regardless, from a moment-to-moment basis, Control offers evolution, not revolution, in comparison to Quantum Break. You get the same kind of environmental microdestruction, with miscellaneous objects flying this way and that when faced with your powers. The RTX ray-traced reflections add a greater degree of oomph though. Whatever you do on screen is mirrored on all the glossy surfaces too. With the arrival of Alan Wake, we see Remedy's emphasis on dynamic lighting. The Alan Wake engine was one of the earlier console titles to make use of the deferred rendering. Deferred rendering allows for a large number of light sources on screen at the time with less of a performance hit. This was crucial to Alan Wake's light and shadow aesthetic. With the introduction of Northlight and Quantum Break, Remedy doubled down on their lighting tech. Northlight brought in a dynamic global illumination rendering for lighting. Static GI has become increasingly common, however, dynamic GI is substantially more intensive from a computational perspective. Together with the excellent physically based material renderer, this allowed Quantum Break to have a CGI-esque visual quality. The lighting wasn't the only reason for this though. Checkerboard rendering and temporal reconstruction are much more frequent these days because the mid-cycle refresh consoles need these techniques to output some approximation of 4K. Implementing dynamic GI on the Xbox One, a console with a GPU roughly equal to this year's iPad, kinda required similar finessing. Motion capture was another area. Motion capture featured prominently in Alan Wake and resulted in a fairly convincing cutscene presentation. With Northlight and Quantum Break, this was really taken to the next level. Remedy's target here was simple: allow for a seamless transition between FMV sequences and in-engine cutscenes. Advanced DI4D motion capture technology allowed for Aidan Gillen and the like to deliver stunning performances, whether in an FMV sequence or in-engine. DI4D comes back in Control, and the results speak for themselves. Control has FMV sequences too, but they're not as frequent as Quantum Break, and crucially, they're not as jarring. FMV video is often displayed on in-game screens. The quality of the engine visuals are good enough that the gap isn't that huge. Material rendering is par excellence. This is clearly an area where Control is building on Quantum Break's strength. The physically based material renderer introduced in that game imbued its otherwise sterile urban environment with an added degree of groundedness. Materials like glass, wood, and metal just looked right, especially with the dynamic global illumination factored in. With Control, physically based rendering adds just as much. Most environments are made up of the same kinds of materials: glass and glossy metal. Material rendering in Control accurately captures these surfaces, but it's RTX that really takes things to the next level. RTX features. RTX has been seen as something of a gimmick ever since Nvidia introduced it with the Turing cards last year. And to be honest, this is what it seemed like. Apart from Metro Exodus, where the ray-traced global illumination completely transformed the game's visuals, other RTX implementations in Battlefield 5 seemed kinda tacked on, obligatorily. Control is the first game since Metro Exodus where RTX has a truly transformative effect on the visuals, and unlike Metro Exodus, Control doesn't use RTX to replace just a single rendering function, global illumination. Instead, it features the most robust RTX implementation that we've seen in a game to date. Control has nearly as many distinct ray tracing options as it does regular graphics options. Considering some titles have nothing more than an RTX toggle or preset, this says a lot. Control's most visible RTX feature is ray traced reflections. There are multiple types in use here. Standard ray traced reflections are one option. Enabling this replaces the game's screen space reflections with real-time ray traced reflections. These are not only of a much higher quality, they also factor in objects that are outside the screen space, behind the camera for instance. Ray-traced translucent reflections make an appearance in Control as well. This is the first time that this technique has been used in-game. It's going to be easier to explain this using a real-world analogy. So think of a translucent glass surface, a sliding door at a supermarket for example. It lets light in from both sides but also reflects objects on both sides. Ray-traced translucent reflections simulate this phenomenon. Shadows also benefit immensely from RTX and Control. The ray-traced contact shadows option is an evolution of HFTS, hybrid frustum traced shadows. This was a technique that utilized path tracing to create contact shadows and first implemented in The Division. The RTX evolution of the technique does much the same. It provides extremely high-quality, accurate, and aliasing-free shadows. You get RTX diffuse lighting as well. This is a subtle effect and mainly serves to enhance the in-game ambient occlusion. There's a lot of ray tracing going on here. While the effects are pretty, our test bench with the 1080 Ti and Ryzen 1700 just couldn't handle it. With RTX disabled, we had no issues hitting 60 FPS in the game. From that perspective, it's surprisingly optimized. Quantum Break doesn't perform anywhere near as good. If you own a Turing card, DLSS is pretty much a must if you want playable frame rates with RTX turned on. So Remedy's finally done it. While both Quantum Break and Alan Wake were considered good but not great, Control is Remedy at their finest, a gripping, inventive narrative paired with top-notch performance capture and stunning visuals. Despite not benefiting from RTX features, we were pleasantly surprised by how well Control ran, and how great it looked on the system with the 1080 Ti. The console versions did credit to themselves too. Nips and tucks in all the right places meant that neither PS4 Pro nor Xbox One owners will be disappointed. And that wraps it up. If you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing to our channel. We upload new videos daily. Also, don't forget to switch on the bell notification icon, that way you don't miss out on any of our videos.